Join the conversation
with Richard Dean, Brandy Scott and Tom Urquhart.
You're listening to the Business Breakfast on Dubai Eye on One.
And I was delighted to have a property report bounce into my WhatsApp this morning just after 6 a.m. I have a special love for people who like to send me things ahead of their release. And this morning, my gratitude goes to Zhann Jochinke, Chief Operating Officer at Property Monitor. He was awake, he was alert, and he's earned himself a slot in the Business Breakfast as a result. Zhann, it's lovely to speak to you. Good morning.
Likewise, Brandy. Thanks for having me on. Glad I hit your messages nice and early.
Yeah, love a bit of early morning data, Zhann. Nothing like it. Property Monitor, of course, has its dynamic pricing index. You put it out every month. Let's have a look at August, which was a very curious month indeed. Traditionally slow for the real estate market because people go on holiday. What did we see this month?
Not a slow August. So like you said, typically August is actually the slowest month of the year. If we look at a market cycle in Dubai, like any market around the world, you have seasonality. The Dubai market typically picks up starting from September, and then we have the main part of the market going all the way through December. Then it slows down. We have a little bit of an uptick in the early part of the year. Nice little bump around July because people are going on vacations and holidays. And then coming back, August is traditionally the slowest month. This year it was the second strongest month, and it's also the strongest August we've had since back to 2009. So about 5,800 transactions for the month came through, and a good mix between off-plan and completed properties in that, about 60-40 split.
And so are you judging the strength of that August on the number of transactions or the size of those transactions?
So volume of transactions as number of transactions is always interesting because regardless of the price point or price appreciation, it means there's activity in the market. And that's what we want. We don't want to see a market slow down when nothing's transacting. So regardless of price being high or low, we want to see strong transaction numbers. So it's a good indicator. Coupled with that is prices have appreciated again, like you mentioned, for the 10th month in a row. So since bottoming out in November last year, we've had 10 months of growth. Last month, 1.6%. And since that bottoming of the market, about 18.5%. And then what we're going to see is within the market cycle itself, we're mirroring the last recovery phase. So when we came out of that last dip, prices appreciated at a similar percent over the initial first 10 months of that recovery.
You look like a man with an opinion, Zhann. In fact, I know you are one. What's your theory as to why we have had that strong August?
Look, it's a mix. There's some off-plan developments. I mean, the off-plan segment, new releases from developers have been really slow since the pandemic. And even leading up to that, the government put measures in place to slow down that excessive supply that was in the market in some segments. Now we've seen developers over the last quarter or so get a little more bullish, more projects coming into the market. So within those numbers, there is a good chunk of off-plan and initial developer sales that have come in. You've got a couple of developers with new project launches coming up, one last week or this week with Nikhil again, and you'll see a few more. So expect some of that volume increases to continue, but not in these mass wave of launches that we had back 5-6 years ago.
The other thing that's unusual about this month's property index from you, up until now, the growth that we've been talking about has all been villas and townhouses. Apartments haven't really been involved in this boom, if we can call it that. That's starting to change, you say?
Yeah, that dynamic's changing for a multiple of reasons. Villa and townhouses, there was so much value going into the early days of the pandemic. It was the perfect time to buy. No one really knew it was, but it worked out to be. And then we've seen this massive appreciation over that last sort of year period or so, but primarily villas and townhouses. The sellers now have gotten a little more bullish and asking prices significantly higher than previous sales. And what we're seeing now is that buyers aren't chasing that market. They're slowing down and they're going, look, I can agree with a 30, 40, 50% increase because the market was so low, but they're not willing to go $1 million above the last sales price on something that's sort of a $4 million property last sold, and now they want $5 million for it. That's not happening. And we're talking the majority of the market, the mass market, not the 10 million plus price point where the activity is just, it's unpredictable and you can't really put anything around it. They'll pay whatever they want to pay.
Right, so apartments now in the game. You mentioned, though, the bottoming out of those prices that we saw late 2020, because we do have to look at this historically, don't we? It's all very well to say, the 10th month of rises, but where are we historically with prices at the moment?
So we're kind of right in the middle, funnily enough. So it's about 22% from the previous peak of the market. So that previous peak being September 2014. And we're 22.5% from the previous low of August 2009. So we're smack bang in the middle of historic prices. So the historic low and the historic high. If prices keep their trajectory right now, we've got about another 12 to 18 months in this cycle, which is a pretty short cycle. So what I'm hoping to see is that price appreciation on an emirate level will start to slow down, or the dynamics of that increase will change. So it'll shift from villas and townhouses now, and now we'll see apartments, like I mentioned before, start to become more popular. There's still value. So we might see 1.5% increases keep going for another year or two, but more buoyed by the apartment segment. If we keep seeing it in the villa townhouse segment, we're probably heading towards that territory where things tend to pop.
Zhann Jochinke, Chief Operating Officer at Property Monitor, thank you very much for your time this morning, and thank you for sharing that data with us ahead of its general release, the monthly dynamic property index that Property Monitor put together.
This is the Business Breakfast on Dubai Eye on One.